My viewers gave me their dumb, stupid, and dare I say goofy game ideas. And in this video, I tried to turn them into something actually fun. And I even got a very serious game developer to rate them from 1 to 10. Starting with Catching Stars, who suggested a drivable shopping cart. So let's hop into Blender and... one second. Here's my shopping cart, fitted with a stainless steel frame. And to add to the realism, I also made the wheels just shake violently in random directions. I added some very basic driving physics and set up this ramp. Oh my god, that airtime was crazy. So it turns out shopping carts and ramps are kinda like me and grass. So Cool the Dev suggested adding a pogo stick, which kind of solves our problem. Because if you think about it, a car is basically just 4 pogo sticks holding up a chair. Actually, don't think about that. So I added these shock absorbers that react to physics. Each wheel now simulates its own acceleration, drag, friction, grip, and suspension, leading to 20 total forces needed to drive the car. So if we hit the ramp again, we soar through the air like a true shopping cart. It's time to give the car a driver. And a lot of you wanted to see my character Berg. I also tried giving him fur, but that was a clear mistake. A few of you suggested adding a banana gun. So I modeled this in Blender and... Hey, Berg's looking kinda tough. I also made a muzzle flash that changes the color based on the ripeness of the banana, cycling between green, yellow, and brown, as well as this bullet tracer which fades over time. If we create a simple test enemy, Berg can now inject enough potassium into his enemies that they explode into a puff of smoke. This is the gunshot sound effect, and speaking of sounds, I couldn't find a single sound effect of a shopping cart on the entire internet. I spent hours looking at this point. So the only option I had was to secretly record one myself, and I'm pretty sure there was a woman who thought I was recording her, but yeah. Anyway, after getting home from the police station, I cleaned up the audio before putting the recording into this software called Mudloop that creates seamless loops, and I think this sounds pretty good. So the game is starting to come together. I'm thinking we make a survivors game similar to Vampire Survivors or Mega Bonk. Enemies will try to attack you from every angle, forcing you to keep driving. So naturally we need some enemy ideas. But before we move on to the enemies, it's time for our first bonus game. This one comes from Matthew, who asked for Wall Simulator. I began by adding a wall. Development was already going pretty smoothly at that point, so I added another wall. Now the gameplay loop here is to look at the wall. But we did some playtesting, and a couple of speedrunners found out that it's actually more optimal to go around the wall and look at it from the other side. Here's a couple of seconds from the world record run. Where were we? Oh yeah, enemies. Starting with Goblin Drobling, who suggested a burger. So I modeled a burger bun in Blender complete with sesame seeds and a giant eyeball, and wrote some code to make him constantly roll towards the player. This guy has a charge attack inspired by Sonic, where he just plants himself into the ground and spins up in place before charging towards the player at Mach 10. I made the spin using a scrolling noise texture on a ring mesh and added some particles to make it look like a wheel kicking up dirt. And if the bun touches you, he'll knock you back. Oh my! Splash requested cheese. Now I went with Swiss cheese solely so I could stuff eyeballs in his holes. Yeah, that looks kinda creepy. He's a flying enemy, but instead of directly attacking you, he tries to predict your movement and drops globs of cheese on the ground. They'll stay there for a while and hurt you if you drive into them. But before we make our next enemy, it's time for the second bonus game. Partially 2K suggested fishing but trying not to catch fish. I interpreted this as a game where you play as a fish and dodge obstacles like sea mines. I teamed up with my friend to make this Skyrim style fish customizer with a million sliders, so you can make any fish you like. We also added the ability to paint your fish, and then a week later Mecha Chameleon comes out and makes like $7 trillion, so lesson learned I guess. I made some iconic fish such as flatfish, chunky fish, and the rainbow fish. There's a slider that changes the fish's expression, which gave us the idea to add proximity voice chat. Thankfully, this is made easy through the Tencent RTC chat API. It's a scalable way to connect your players together, and it also supports real-time messaging if we later want a text chat. It comes bundled with some great features like real-time translation, so players can communicate across languages. We can also create different groups for things like private chats. It has cross-platform support by default and even has SDKs for Unreal and Unity, as well as Flutter and React Native. It comes with full documentation, so it's really never been easier to add chats to your games. They also have a very generous free forever plan. There are no concurrency limits, and until you reach 1,000 monthly active users, you won't have to pay a penny. You can get started for free at the link in the pinned comment. Thanks Tencent for sponsoring this video. The next enemy comes from Fry Guy, who wants a waffle. So I got to work in Blender and simulated this low poly liquid to cover him in syrup. I want these guys to work kind of like the thwomps in Super Mario 64. He leaves little patches of syrup wherever he walks, which work the exact same as the cheese splats from earlier. But if you get too close, this is probably my favorite character I've ever made for one of my games. And I feel like if a waffle wanted to kill me, this is probably how he'd do it. I posted about the waffle on Twitter, and in the comments, Just Geel told me that apparently I'd culturally appropriated the thwomp and the womp. So as a sincere apology, I asked if there's an enemy that they wanted added to the game. They gave me this design, so I took it into Blender and made this little gumball guy with a propeller on his head. He flies towards the player and periodically opens his mouth to shoot 3 gumballs, leaving some splats on the ground. Now, our next enemy comes from friend of the show, Big D, who I was showing the waffle to and offered 2 ideas: a milk carton and an eggplant. I think we turn the milk carton into the thwomp. Instead of moving, this guy stays in place and periodically releases milk shockwaves that throw you into the air. Danny actually sent me some concept art for the eggplant, which I followed extremely faithfully by turning it into a giant gorilla eggplant who spins his arms around and launches himself across the map at you. And I promise this isn't just a bit for the video, I genuinely left my PC open and came back to this. The next idea comes from Fear Rouge, who suggested a portal gun, which is the perfect way to spawn our enemies. I decided to base these off the box dimension in Club Penguin, and it's a custom shader that overlays a spiral on top of some noise. I can also animate it open and closed. It's pretty much just Uber Eats, but the food is trying to kill you. At this point, we have a cart, guns, and enough enemies, but there's only a few hours until I need to show this off to our very serious game developer, so I think it's about time we make a map. I tried a few different food-themed ideas before ultimately settling on a grocery store. I made a basic room with some shelves and found a food pack online from Kenny to fill the crates that I made. The shelves in the middle have bottles and sauces with paths through them to give the map a little more depth. I'm thinking that for upgrades we have 2 types: power-ups that spawn on the floor, as well as roguelike style upgrades that you get for defeating enemies. Let's start with Greeny's idea of a rocket booster and combine it with a ketchup bottle to fit the food theme. I modeled the ketchup bottle in Blender and also set up some blend shapes. I made the particles for the boost and made the blend shapes animate with some noise to make it look like the bottle is gonna explode. If you collect one of these power-ups, they'll activate, giving you a burst of speed. The next idea comes from Gabby, beer. This one's pretty self-explanatory, just like in real life, it makes you invincible. There's also the nuclear bomb, suggested by Ethan, which just kills everything on the map. Alright, so before we get our very serious game developer to test the game and rate your guys' ideas, let's check out the final bonus game. Suggested by Electric Rat, chess, but it's also Minesweeper, so you can randomly explode. I whipped together a basic chess game and figured the only way to really make this work is by extending the chessboard. So when you move forward, it'll tell you how many spaces are near a bomb, and if you land on one, then your pawn gets promoted to death. Okay, it's time for our very serious game developer to play our very not so serious game.
Okay. Oh my god. Okay. 100 to 110 HP, damage 5 to 10, fire rate 1 to 0.9. I feel like if I can crank the fire rate, that's probably the best way to go. It seems like there's no fire button, he just does it on his own, which is good. I don't have to overthink that, I just have to drive. I just one thing at a time, that's good. Oh my!
Yeah, this thing's supposed to be a power-up, but it kind of screws you over more than...
Yeah, that's not a power-up. I don't think I need more health. That would imply that I'm at a skill deficit, and that's just not the case. So I'm only needing to increase my offense. I really don't have a problem with any defense.
Cut to
nice.
30 seconds in the future.
Don't say that, don't say that. Wait, did I die? That was a practice run. This really feels like when you control a shopping cart in real life and there's like a 25% chance that one of the wheels is just going to go in a random direction. Favorite enemy so far is the cheese. Least favorite enemy is the frothing milk. Oh, wow. I see why this guy could be broken. One's down over there. No, this is great. This is Game of the Year 2026, or 2027, I'm assuming, is when this comes out.
And Juniper's favorite idea was...
I think the whole idea of it being in a shopping cart, because that kind of shaped the entire game.
Which means catching stars, you win. You win. Congratulations. I'm not going to release the game just yet as I want to fix some bugs, but it should be out within the next week or so. Make sure to subscribe, like, all that stuff, and if you're doing GMTK this weekend, good luck.